Okay. So you're basically starting almost from nothing.
Yeah, this is from nothing, except for 2 string arrays with some data.
Okay. So you just found some random text.
Yeah.
And put them into...
It's very random.
Okay.
I think I put the word Austin and maybe like wolf in there.
Okay. Yeah. Other than that, it's just lorem ipsum.
It's just lorem ipsum.
Okay.
Should we explain what that is?
Sure.
Okay.
Why don't you go ahead?
Lorem ipsum, when you're dealing with text, you want to have something where you get to see all the different shapes of letters. You don't want to just put like the letter A. So lorem ipsum is very specifically designed gibberish, which is used here.
If anyone listening has ever experienced trying to code a website and just needs some text so that they can fill up the website because they don't have the copy yet,
or their mobile app,
or a mobile app, or I mean, it came from a long time ago where they just tried to design things and they needed placement text or just placeholder text.
Yeah, I actually think it probably came from somebody who just spoke gibberish. And they're like, yo, your gibberish looks really good on my website. Can I write that down? And then science and...
Right. And that person's name was Lorem.
Yeah.
Lorem ipsum.
Lorem ipsum.
Yeah.
So here
More
we are.
true facts or false facts.
It's what you don't learn with our program that's important.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the challenge is to take that lorem ipsum, to take that placeholder text and create an article viewer.
Yeah, kind of like if you're a mail client where you have like, here's the title, here's the detail. This is a very common thing that people often want to do. You don't want to show your user everything all at once. Sometimes you want to have some limited context for navigation. So we're doing that 2-pane layout that works both for a phone and for a tablet size.
All right. So here you're creating headlines fragment.
Yes.
And extending list fragment.
Right. So this is cool. List fragment is fragment, but it has a little bit of functionality to just make it easy to deal with a list view. Okay. So if you're doing it with a custom list view, you may not want to do this. You may want to have more control. But for this exercise, it's like, look, we're not dealing with list views, so let's just inherit some of that functionality. So like normally you don't have a set list adapter with fragment. You actually have to create an adapter and connect it. But this makes it a little bit more readable for this exercise. And list fragment obviously then would extend fragment. Like if we were to dive into it's just list fragment, it would extend level. Fragment one level. Okay. Yeah. And you get some other cool stuff. Actually, the one thing that is cool is rather than having to create a listener for when you have a on item click, it's already created one that calls a method. And you can just override that method and be like, oh, here's where I put the stuff. So if you click on the article headline, then it already has that ready to. It already has a listener set up. Everything that a list view needs, it's already written for you. Got it. And since they just went over list views, this is appropriate. Yeah. Nice. In fact, I recommend anyone, when they're coding along, if they want to use list fragment, go into it and see how it works. Because it's kind of cool to be like, explore the code a little bit. Yeah. So here we are. And you're just pausing. I'm just pausing. Yeah. Admiring. For dramatic effect. Admiring the onCreate method. Yeah. Is this an appropriate time to get into like the fragment as a solution to this problem? Because there was the problem in mobile, right? Where phones were great. Yeah. Phones were great. And then tablets started to become popular. Mm-hmm. And suddenly there was a lot more real estate to play with. Yeah. So the deal with that is Android, as an example, created these activities, and only one activity runs at once, and we move between them with intents. So people are like, well, with this tablet, it'd be much better from a design standpoint to show somebody more of the application at once. Mm-hmm. So you can only solve that 2 ways. You either make something that's like below activity or above, depending on how you look at it. I think like most baseline is below. So you either have to make something handle multiple activities. Oh, okay. Or you have to have activities handle multiple activity-like things. Right. So not below as in like inherit from, but below as in support. As in, support and manage. Manage for. Okay. For instance, like the Android operating system manages activities. Right. So you could have put something in between activities and the operating system, kind of low level. That would be one solution. That's one solution. But fragments are the solution of like, okay, let's have activities be like the same thing. Activities are now applications. And the whole idea is to subdivide in some way so that you can have partitions of the screen. Yeah. Well, you still have that separation of concerns, right? Where it's like an activity is concerned with just, what is going on with it. Mm-hmm. In this case, you're saying, hey, activity, I don't really care about the specific elements. I want you to kind of be, I kind of want to give you a raise. You're now a manager, right? You're not, or an engineering manager. You're no longer just an engineering manager.
Okay.
And fragments are kind of like the upcoming new blood. And they're like, okay, we're activities 2.0, and we're going to try our hand at doing this and learn architecturally what was working and not working with activities and improve upon them. So basically, fragments are just activities with kind of a refinement layer.
Okay.
And now activities are this application layer. Now activities really are your app when you're dealing with fragments.
Okay. So does that mean something, if they're going to write an app with fragments, then they should only have one activity to manage those fragments?
Yeah, unless you have multiple points to come in at that really makes sense. So for instance, with this viewer, right, I have an article viewer.
Yeah.
The activity is like, hey, start looking at these articles.
Just a quick note here. What are you doing? This looks weird.
SWDP. So this is the new way. There used to be an old way where you put just large, but now you actually specify a folder with SW and DP and whatever numbers in between it. Mm-hmm. It will use that layout name for DPs that are higher than that. So here you use the exact same name as you used in layout, activity main. Mm-hmm. And when you reference it in your code, it'll choose that depending on where it's running. So like a tablet, it'll choose the one from that folder. A phone, it'll choose the one from the layout folder.
Oh, okay. So it's a way to kind of specify for different device screen sizes what layout should be prioritized.
Yeah, and they've gone to this point where it's like, look, let's specify it with numerics rather than like the drawable folder, which just kind of has like small, medium, large, extra large kind of stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So you were saying that with fragments as a solution, it's if you have an application where you have multiple entry points or something, you still may want to have multiple activities.
Yeah, because fragments can't handle intents. Mm-hmm. Activities and intents still move things around.
Okay.
So you can still think of it as like if you replace the word activity with application.
Okay.
You can still have a multi-application application, right? Like Adobe Photoshop. Mm-hmm. Adobe Photoshop is an app, and eventually they're like, oh, we need Illustrator and all these other things. Mm-hmm. So they create the Creative Suite.
Okay.
So you still want to have Photoshop and Illustrator, just like you want to have Activity 1, Activity 2. But now Photoshop might have like the toolbar window, and that's a fragment. And so again, it's just dividing up this functionality even more.
So you need to know both. You can't get away now with just converting everything to fragments.
You wouldn't want to. I think for simple applications, stick to activities. If you really want to support the tablet environment, if that makes sense for your application, then use fragments. There's no real kind of like I don't know, like you must do it this way. It's choose what you're doing that's appropriate for you.
And now I see you're using an actual fragment in your layout, a fragment tag.
Which makes sense, right? Because a fragment is a part of the view hierarchy. Mm-hmm. So here I am just describing like, oh, I don't have a text view. I have a whole, and I don't have a linear layout. I don't have a relative layout. I have a whole fragment. Mm-hmm. And so you can explicitly define things like this. And it's really great for two-pane layouts because when you're combining multiple fragments, you kind of want to see how you're laying things out. Mm-hmm. But for a one-pane layout, you're going to have to do it programmatically. So we're going to show them both ways here. Mm-hmm. And again, that cool trick, I love that trick, the 0 DP to make it so we can just describe things in proportion. But yeah, I think the most important part with fragments is, again, you don't need to, they act like view groups, but they really are a whole activity. Mm-hmm. And you're going to see...
Except they don't handle intents.
Except for they don't handle intents.
So is there another way to pass data between fragments?
Well, the activity has a closer relationship with the fragments. Okay. So it's going to do the same. It's going to still pass a bundle around.
Okay.
But you're going to use a method called set arguments to pass it to it.
Okay. And we'll see that later.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. And now notice this thing over here, these rendering problems. Don't believe Android Studio when they tell you rendering problems. But this one's actually a really good rendering problem thing. It says like, hey, I don't know what to do here. Pick what you want me to show you for these warnings. So if you just choose those two, then it will actually just show you that.
And if you chose other ones?
It was trying to. You're now asking a lot from a tool. I mean, Android Studio is trying to figure out.
It's trying to interpret. It's getting more and more difficult to interpret
without not at runtime. Yeah. So it's like, look, I just don't have enough overhead of parsing to figure out what you're gonna do.
Right.
So give me
some clue.
Hey, buddy, give me a hint. Dude, were you gonna use this one or this one?
The other one, yeah.
And you're that one, dude. And it's like, oh.
Okay, cool. We're cool again.
We're cool again. Okay, yeah. Sorry about that. I always feel like Android Studio says sorry about that when I choose a warning suppression.
Yeah. It's polite.
Yeah.
Android Studio is very polite.
Yeah, it's like, hey, are you? Did you? I was. And I'm like, hey, buddy, it was this, and he's like, oh, thanks.
Yeah. It really wants to be helpful.
It is.
Like it will sometimes lead you down the wrong path with how helpful it is.
Right.
Because you're like, hey,
it's a powerful tool, but it's not very smart.
Right.
That's the reason why we are the developers. We don't have just Android Studio writing apps for us.
Right.
Although I'd love to see that tool. I'd love to be able to just, hey, Android Studio,
do it.
Just make me this app.
Yeah. Someday.
Yeah.
Maybe someone who's listening to this will make that happen.
If that's true, I hope they remember me.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So this is an interesting code along in the sense that we're talking about a lot of the conceptual ideas behind what's being built here. Mm-hmm. But if they really wanted to just know like exactly how things work for this code along, they could kind of just put us on mute and read the comments that I'm typing. Because I really want to make sure that people... This is a very common thing for even more intermediate developers to completely misuse fragments. Okay. It's for whatever reason, Android's documentation just didn't quite suggest what was going on.
The use.
Yeah. And so if they follow this type of thinking that we're coding out for them, they'll be fine.
I remember when you were first doing this several months ago and really trying to incorporate their change, because this change is fairly recent.
It was not a few months ago, but yeah.
Yeah, but
it was a few months ago that we were trying to figure out how to explain it to people.
Right. but the change itself is pretty cutting edge. Like Android operating system was not prepared for fragments when it was originally produced.
No, it was not. I mean, I don't think many people were prepared for the drastic change in technology. Like, wait, there's a computer on my phone? Yeah. Wait, there's a tablet?
Right.
Except for Microsoft had a tablet, 5 years earlier, but they didn't know how to market it.
but I remember you going through this and being like, this is actually challenging to comprehend. And so what you've done here is you've broken it down into a place where, now the complexity level is... You've basically said, hey, if we look at it this way, everything starts to make sense.
Ah, right. Okay. Yes. Okay. So the reason why fragments can be tricky, because they can also be not tricky at all, is there's a habit you get into, and we've just gotten them into this habit of this type of state, and it's like, oh, I'm going to take this thing, I'm going to save a reference to that object. So like, oh, I have a view, so let me save a reference to that view, right? Mm-hmm. And you don't want to do that with fragments.
You don't want to like consider, oh, that's that fragment, so I'm going to reference it in this way.
As much as possible, don't
do that. Okay, interesting. Why not?
Because so the activity is managing a certain part of the fragments, but if you're going to have these two like mini activity 2.0 things going on, again, they're activities almost, right? So
they behave like activities.
They have all the functionality of an activity. Okay. So one of the things that you don't do when you're writing an activity is you don't decide how to actually render that to the screen.
Okay.
You don't actually say like, hey, what's going on with the screen? Give me a reference to the lower level. Let me write some OpenGL code to take all these Java drawings. And, you don't do all that, right? So now that you have fragments on that level, you can't just say, oh, put the fragment up there. Like, you don't know what might be going on in the operating system. So you now have to manage the activity lifecycle or the fragment lifecycle. You now have to manage that, whereas before Android was managing that for you. Like you didn't have to say like, oh, activity, call on pause because someone called me, right?
Right.
So rather than putting you into that very painful place and saying, you're going to have to manage all that on pause, on stop, all that kind of stuff. Android has decided, okay, here's the deal. I'm going to give you a fragment manager. Just ask him for anything you want.
Got it.
And I'll give it to you when it's available.
So it's kind of like interacting with the fragment manager as opposed to the fragment directly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a middleman here.
There's a middleman, and you got to trust that middleman because he's doing a lot of stuff for you.
Okay.
Like a common thing that a beginner will do is they'll commit the fragment, and then they'll think the fragment's on the screen. And that's not what you've done. You've just signed the fragment's name down to be put on the screen when it's supposed to be.
The fragment manager has ultimate authority over when it goes on the screen.
Right. So your code needs to definitely be, and actually all of your Java code should be like this. But your code definitely needs to really adhere strongly to asking kind of what's up. Like here's a perfect example right now.
On line 33?
32?
32.
See how this is the headlines fragment, and he's going to find out whether or not the article fragment is on the screen. Well, we could have passed that in to in a constructor for the headlines fragment, and then saved a reference to it, or even said like, "Hey, tell this thing that it's a two-pane thing, like a Boolean." But that would have been inappropriate because it would have limited reusability. I mean, here we just want to say, "Hey, fragment manager, is there anybody here named Steve?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, Steve's here." Like, cool, okay. Well, I'm gonna change how I behave.
Got it. So, do we reference the fragment manager?
You want to ask the fragment manager for a reference to the fragment.
Okay.
And then do not save that in a member variable.
Okay.
You keep your methods just to be like
just locally and very in a very defined and confined space of the code is where you want to actually interact with the fragment through the fragment manager.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you know the real reason why is you have the fragment life cycle. You still have the activity life cycle. Like there's a lot of life cycles going on now.
Yeah.
So just have the fragment manager handle the life cycle stuff for you, and you just focus on making a cool app.
Okay. Well, I'll try.
Okay.
I'll try to make it cool.
Well, make a good app then. If it's not really cool, make just people be like, that wasn't really cool, but it was the best.
It was well engineered.
Yeah. So here we are. This is the method I was telling you about. We don't have to set a listener, even though, I mean, they're probably great at it now, and we know how to do it. Just a little easier to just override a method that sets all that stuff up for you. And this will make it so that when you actually press it on a tablet, it'll stay selected.
User feedback. That's important.
Feedback. It is important.
Because when it doesn't stay selected, you're not sure what
you're looking at. No. No, I've definitely had that kind of like, oh, okay, I've selected that.
Yeah. Okay. And now wait, what?
Now wait, what? Now wait, what?
Now wait, what?
Okay, so I think I'm going to breeze past this right now, and I'm curious to find out how comfortable they feel with this. Because this is... Some people don't like doing this. I love doing this. I think it's just such a graceful way to do it, to do this interface thing inside the headlines fragment.
Well, what I would love to see, actually, for those who are listening to this, is to see their questions at this point.
Yeah,
I would love to see some feedback.
If you're listening to this and you have questions, I want to know, what did you name your interface? If you're not copying my code along, if you tried it out on your own, which you should have, I want to know what your first instinct to name that interface is. Because, again, the two hardest things in coding are clearing caches and knowing what to name things.
Yeah.
So I'd be really curious. Here we are working on the onAttach method. Because, fragments and activities.
They get attached?
They're attached.
Attached to each other?
Yeah.
How sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They also detach from each other.
Ooh.
Pretty easily.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Maybe not so sweet.
But then they immediately just go right into the unattach it right again.
Okay. So it's they're fickle, but free.
Fickle and free. Yeah. That would be how to describe the a big tune between activities and fragments. Here we go. We're doing our first like real try catch. We're doing it all in a row, creating a custom error. This is great. This is the kind of thing that makes your fragment something that you'll reuse, because you'll be like, okay, this will handle me reusing it and forgetting to implement that thing in a way that the log error makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
This is the longest silence we've ever had in one of these code-alongs.
I think we've had longer.
Really?
Yeah. I'm actually just trying to understand exactly what you're trying to catch.
Ah.
Or exactly how you're trying to respond to a catch, to be more specific.
So what I was doing there was I was saying, take this pointer and point it to this data, and that data, that callback, right? So it's just pointing to a place in memory, and call it, cast it to an I forgot what I called, on headline selected listener, the interface. So I'm like, basically like, hey, callback, totally point to this thing that looks like an on headline listener. And that could result in an error, because I actually could have, that activity that is coming in, its data in memory could actually look different. So there would be like a runtime error thrown and say, actually, there is no method that looks like what your interface needs there. I can't do that. And then it would throw an error. And rather than stop the program, I want to stop the program and also let the programmer know that, oh, this is how you fix your problem now. Because if on article selected is not there, then you don't want to call on article selected.
Right. Makes sense. Now, you added copious notes to this, like you pointed out before. Why now, as opposed to earlier or later? Like, why did you consider it necessary to add these notes?
It came to me in a dream. Because I think with fragments, it's possible, because we've just gone over activities in this new world of Android. You're going to start having an impression of how things work, and kind of right immediately we're
almost flipping the script.
We're flipping the script, yeah. And I didn't want people to let go of their previous. I mean, this is something I learned from you, right? I don't want people to let go of their previous mental models, because those are still true.
No, their mental models should be bending and flexing right now. Like they should be like, okay, I don't quite, but I can kind of see how this interrelates.
And so, yeah, I wanted it to be something where they could see. Remember that thing that you were doing where like you make me narrate out loud what I'm thinking, and I get really frustrated because it's hard to work and talk at the same time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, this I felt was a version of that. Of like, here's what I'm thinking while I'm doing this.
Got it.
Whereas normally your Java code should be, and this is one of the great things about it being so verbose, it should express very clearly what it does with no comments.
Okay.
This, I was a little worried that it wouldn't.
Well, now that it's there and they'll be able to download this code, how should they use your comments?
How should they use my comments? I think if they're implementing fragments and they ever get stuck of how does that work again,
you should go back to this.
Look at it,
and
yeah, and in fact, this is something that I do all the time. I have projects where I test out a theory for like either a new architecture or a new idea, and I'll just make a new project and create something, and then I'll save that project. And then if ever I want to do that thing, I go back in my projects and I go, well, I've done it before. This is how I did it. And then I don't need to spend time debugging the things that I've already figured out.
Right. Now, what are you setting up here? In the article fragment.
Right. So we have an enumerator in a way, but this is actually more of a, think of this as like a permanent key.
Which Line 15?
The arg position.
Oh, line 14. Okay.
Yeah. So the key is position. Because we're going to want to communicate between the activity and article fragment.
Okay.
And we have to do it in that bundle way. Remember that guy with the key value pair?
Yeah, love that guy.
So I make, yeah.
So much contained in so little.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah.
So the making it final static, because it should never change. When you're communicating the position of where in the article string array you want to use, that should be constant. I'm also setting it to current position to -1. And this is going to be interesting right here, because I think I'm about to write a bug. And I would love for them to be able to figure out when the bug is written.
Let's see who writes down the bug in the question forum first.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Brownie points to that person.
If you and don't skip ahead. Don't skip ahead where I'm like, oh right.
Yeah.
But current position is equal to -1. Now I like to use -1 as a place marker for non-initialization. So there is no -1 ever in an array. So I use -1 because now I know, like, if my code immediately crashes, I'm like, okay, I'm not dealing with my arrays right. I forgot about some initialization.
Right.
If I started from 0, the thing could accidentally work for a while. So that current position will be, what article are we looking at?
Right.
So we are, right, we're getting the view. And notice that, again, we have get view. An activity, we would be setting the content view. And a fragment, you have to be using get view to get the main root view. And you have to be careful when you use that, because update article view, if we use that like too early in the life cycle, there won't be a view yet. So
what is that method solving for?
Update article view? It's a public method that is going to allow somebody else, such as an activity, to change what article is being seen.
So the actual content of the article.
Yeah, if you give it a 0, it'll show you the first article, a 1, the next one, etc.
Got it.
So that's the main controlling method. Yeah, so this is good in terms of navigating the fragment lifecycle landscape. Because at this point, they should all know when onStart happens. A lot of initialization has happened at onStart. So what we want to do is, remember I was telling you about that bundle thing? We could just call update article view. But I wanted to show them, like, look, here's another way to set up a fragment in the beginning, is with that sticking that bundle through. So this is kind of how you get intent bundles into your fragment.
That's really cool, because I liked intents.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to lose them.
Yeah.
And now we don't really have to.
It's okay, buddy. You're not going to lose them.
They're still there for us.
Yeah.
But in a way, when we're dealing with fragments, now we can get kind of that bundle of data in there.
Yeah, and it's also a simpler check when you start with the bundle, because you can just say, like, hey, is the bundle null? No? Okay. I think right there I'm noticing, like, oh, I could have used that. Do I want to go up and use that?
Use what?
Update article view.
Oh, okay.
Or do I want to actually, like, check for exactly what I want? And I just went for it.
Okay.
I was just like, no, I know that I'm going to use that key, and it's going to be an int. So there we go. We're using that key value pair. So that way, basically, if you give it the data of, like, oh, article 0 that's in that bundle, it'll pass that out. And you'll see me use arg position outside later so that I know what key to use, which is a great separation of concerns. Like, keep all of the variable values. You don't want to put, like, 4 in your main activity, because later you're going to come back and be like, why is it 4? You want to be able to refer to constants anytime that you're passing a number around to represent data that isn't variable. That's why they call them constants.
Yeah. And variables.
And which are
distinguishes.
Because they vary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are they constantly varying?
Variables?
Yeah.
Yes. No.
No, they can't be, right?
Wait, are they constantly? No.
They actually are probably fairly constant.
I feel tricked in this conversation. Yeah, they're you shouldn't vary your variables
too much.
Too much.
Too much variance.
Too much variance.
But constants are clear. They can't vary.
Constants are clear. They cannot vary.
They should not vary, at least.
They should not. Well, they can't if they're final.
Right.
I feel like there's a poem hidden here somewhere in here.
Yeah, someone should write a haiku.
Not it.
Oh, crap.
Okay, so now we're getting into concerns over rotation and save and restore instant state, which is cool.
Ah, you mean changing from landscape to portrait or vice versa?
Yep. Also getting a phone call or running another one of your other cool apps in the middle of this.
Some kind of interrupt.
Some kind of interrupt. And this is, I'm not sure if we've gone over this explicitly. So this might be the first time that we're doing that.
Well, talk us through it, man.
Okay. So there is this variable that you get when you have a restore or on save instant state. And it works just like an intent. It's got this bundle thing. And you basically can throw some variables in there when you have to close things down. When you have to close up shop, it's kind of like putting things in the back room. Mm-hmm. And then restore, you pick up the state again, and you go through the back room, and you lay out all your chairs or whatever, and
our
put things back.
Neighbors just did that in the coffee shop right next door.
They did just do that.
I watched them do that.
Yeah, so they just ran their on save instant state. Mm-hmm. And here you see like the out state. So what's the state we're going out with? And here I'm just saying, hey, put for that same key. Remember the position of whatever we were at? Because you don't want someone to leave their app and be like, oh, man, I was going back and forth between my email to look at this map. So here we are saving it. Notice how much easier we must be in two-pane layout was there. Or how... notice now how simpler it will be. It won't be much more.
Yeah.
It was so easy, I at first forgot to do it. And then after I do it, I still think it's so easy that I kind of hesitate for a minute.
You're like, wait, what?
See,
that it can't be that it.
4, 5. I'm slowly typing because I'm reconsidering, like, wait, is that all I have to... You're right, that's all I have to do.
Also, I've noticed that you tend to type crate instead of create quite often.
No, I actually mean crate fragment. It's another really
There's
cool
a new fragment.
Yeah,
List fragment and crate fragment.
Crate fragments. Okay. They're
Oh, you caught it.
Oh. I wasn't going to use crate. It's too bad.
Not. Yeah.
Crate fragments are amazing.
They should probably research crate fragments. They should really know about them.
I should create a crate fragment. just for them.
Can you do an on create for a crate fragment?
Well, your crate fragment should override on create. It should also have an on crate method, which it would run instantaneously in the beginning. Oh God, I do not mean to make them confused. No, yes, I definitely missed the E when spelling create. So here we are doing the swap. Super simple. Actually, I don't know why I love doing the swap.
What's the swap?
The swap is again, we're in a one pane layout now. So this is code for if they're on their phone. You're gonna well, for one, we're gonna put that which article they should show. But this is a one pane layout where they're going to be taking the headline and then swapping it out for the detail view, for the article view.
Okay, so it's like they have a list view of all the article headlines. They click on one, and now all they see is the article contents.
Yeah,
for that specific one they clicked on,
which they would have normally done with an activity, right? Mm-hmm. But in this case,
but because they are setting themselves up to be tablet ready.
Exactly. So
they have to manage that smaller screen as well.
Mm-hmm. In fact, there's more overhead managing the smaller screen.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the reason why I like swapping is because I get to just give the fragment manager a bunch of commands. And that just feels good to be like, hey, ready, get it ready, set it up, manager. Put it in the back stack, go. And it's just kind of like, yeah.
It's nice to have something working for you.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's for a moment, it's almost like not Java. It's almost just like you're typing into a command line, like, hey, replace it, do this. Which normally, I mean, you know me, I really dislike train wreck code. Mm-hmm. But for here, I mean,
it's actually useful.
It is useful.
In a functional way, it kind of shows you all of the commands you're issuing to your subservient fragment manager.
Yeah, absolutely. Although this one, I will criticize Android's architecture right here. I don't like that the add to backstack parameter it does not have an obvious need to be something specific, because I don't like seeing null too much.
Yeah.
And I've definitely talked with students before where they're like, why are you passing it null? And I'm like, well, because if I pass something in there, it will not be useful. And they're like, why don't you just pass something in there? And I'm like, because then later I'll wonder why I'm passing that in there.
Right. It would be so much cleverer if you could pass it into
here we go. Yeah.
Nice. And that's the swap.
And that's the swap.
That's the swap you like so much.
If it would be so much easier if we could what?
I was just saying, if we could pass an int or something and have it be in the backstack at a certain position, like pass 2 back, pass 3 back.
I'm not sure if you can reorder that. You might be able to do that actually.
If you can, then that's awesome. If not, then I agree with you.
I think actually, if you pass something in there, you can reference it. I think it's a key value pair that you can use. I just never have used it. Here we go. Okay, so can you find out where I screwed up? Okay. Here's where I screwed up. Obviously, the index is -1, and the length is 2. Current position starts out at -1, so what do we know so far? Currently, I clearly didn't set that up. Here's where I set things up. I'm like, okay. Use the position if it's clear. Otherwise, update the current position. Clearly, unless it's -1.
Oh, and that's what you used the -1 originally for.
It was to remind me.
To remind you to do that, and then you forgot.
And then and that's why we set it -1.
So it would trigger even if you had forgotten.
Yeah, because what will happen now? We see no article selected. There's a default state, which maybe you don't want, but yeah. And here we go. And I'm seeing that I went past that really fast, but my issue was this. And when I'm clicking on it,
single.
When I'm that just makes it so that you have one thing selected, not multiple. But I'm confused for a bit. And then I remember this.
Oh, yes.
That layout comes with Android, but we actually want to use this list item activated view. It's one that actually sets it to blue or not. And I make this reminder.
Not available.
Wait, that doesn't make any sense.
Not is it available before Honeycomb or not available?
It's not
available.
It's not available.
Okay. So you're just emphasizing not. You're not actually using a double negative to mean a positive.
Right. I'm just, yes. And that's how you build a master detail layout.
Yes. Excellent.
Yeah.
And that's fragments.